What's up, Cops? I'm Lydia in Nashville, and I got Marcus and Carole with me today. Marcus, do you want to share where you are?
Yeah, hi, what's up, Copts? This is Marcus. I'm talking to you now from Toronto, Canada. And in the back of me, Maha's kitchen. It's like an a very important Egyptian spot in
Mm.
diaspora. It's a very known restaurant. It serves Egyptian food and really shares about Egyptian culture. Most people who go there actually are non-Egyptians, but they love it. And usually there is a lion in the back of me because this is how good the food is. So check it
Wow.
out. Hi,
Yeah.
Carol. Hi, Lydia.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
How cold is it there?
It's 3 Celsius, which is 37 Fahrenheit.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, not too bad actually. The weather is nice and there is sun. So yeah,
Yes, good, 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 good. I was like, he's gonna be out there the whole time. Actually, that's not.
it's
Well,
fun.
yeah. And we have Carole. Carole, how are you?
Hello, I'm Carol. I'm doing well. I'm in
Yeah.
Charlotte,
Okay.
um,
In the South.
in the South. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
doing well. The weather is nice today. It's not raining, so
It
that's a
is
good
nice.
thing.
Yeah. Carole is part of our new series to bring in cool Coptic people and speak to them and get to know them. So, Carole, first question. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Carol Abu Musa. I was born in Cairo, Egypt. I came to the
Mm,
US when I was 14.
mm.
My both my parents are Egyptian. My ancestors are from Upper Egypt, mainly from Asyut and Beirut. And
But you were
I
raised outside of a site, right?
Yeah, I was raised in Cairo, Egypt.
Okay.
My grandparents, both sets of grandparents, moved to Cairo eventually, like
Mm,
over time, and that's where they met, and that's where they got married, and where my parents were born.
mm. And you came from Egypt to the south of the United
Yes,
States.
correct. I came
Okay.
from Cairo at 14 years old to upstate South Carolina
Yeah,
is where I moved to.
that's wild. I'm always surprised by Coptic people who start off in the south because I feel like it's a jarring experience.
Yes, it was definitely a jarring experience. I went to a like a Catholic school in Egypt, and then when I
Huh.
came here, I went to like a small private Christian school. So it wasn't as huge a transition, but it was still enormous in ways that
Mm,
I didn't realize at the time.
mm,
Just because my identity as like person raised in a Christian family didn't fit with how they viewed Christianity in that school.
mm,
So it's just like it was a very jarring experience for me.
mm,
Ah, could you elaborate more on the
mm,
what do you mean by jarring, or why do you use that word?
Because it so I was trying to fit in ways that I didn't realize I was,
mm,
because I was, teenager. But a lot of it was trying to prove that yes, there are Christians in Egypt, trying to prove that
mm,
no, I didn't convert to Christianity when I came to the US,
mm,
trying to prove that me opposing the war on Iraq at the time
mm,
was not something that came out of, like, I don't know,
mm,
like an Arab background, but it just really fit it very nicely into my Christian identity, and it didn't conflict. And that was very hard for me, like
mm.
understanding how Christians in the United States, especially in the South, like
Yeah.
view this as like one big giant thing, and we don't see it in the same way.
Mm,
One of the main things that was jarring for me was so we came in 2005, so 2005,
mm,
6, 7 was a lot of stuff happening in the Coptic world in Egypt, and nobody in my school knew anything about it. And whenever I would
Mm,
share about it, like there was very little interest because like it just felt very foreign. And so it felt very like weird to be Christian but not be viewed as Christian in the same way.
mm. I definitely have that same experience because because we're in the Bible Belt, there's definitely a sense of um we know what Christianity is, and I don't know what you're bringing into this, but you're definitely not. So I got called a heretic many times, even like some of the Catholic kids, because um, Tennessee is very Protestant, so the Catholics were going through it too, which is the really interesting part. But I totally resonate with that, and I feel like um, it's a very interesting point when we talk about like white Christianity and how non-accepting it is of brown and black Christians. Like James Baldwin said, the most segregated hour in the United States is high noon on a Sunday, and I feel like that still resonates. Of like them not validating our 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 religion and our faith. Um, Something else you were saying that there was a lot of things going on in 2005, 6 and 7 in the Coptic church. Can you elaborate? I was young, so I'm like curious what was going on that you wanted to talk about with folks in the South and yeah.
Yeah, so it was basically a lot of what was happening was like individual instances of like um, attacks on churches, or
Mm,
specifically attacks on Coptic people. And it was one of the things that I would want to bring up, say, okay, like I'm worried about this, or especially when like
mm,
war in Iraq stuff happened, and alongside this, I would want to say like, okay, these are also my people, like war in Iraq, even though they're
mm,
not directly, I'm not directly related, like family ties, but like what's
right.
happening is happening to all of us. And it just didn't feel like, to them, it
Mm,
felt too distant. And
mm,
like, so whenever, whether it's an attack on like a church, or whether it's like something that happened as part of war in Iraq, I couldn't get I couldn't get
mm,
it through to people that this concerns me too. And it, at some point, I just gave up trying, because you just have to try to fit in and just keep going. Um,
mm,
and because of, I guess when we moved to South Carolina, we had a few like family friends that helped us move, like transition in, but we didn't have a huge community.
mm,
And that made it harder for me to integrate
mm,
into anything. So it was just easier to try to integrate with just white American Christianity, and try to fit into that mold, instead of trying to like prove over and over again that yes, I'm Christian, and no, I didn't convert when I came here, and yes, I can politically have a different opinion than yours, and we're like nothing changes about who I am.
mm,
Hmm.
Yeah.
I
mm,
think like a couple of things actually that came to mind, Carol, from what you
mm,
said, and I'm super intrigued because what we like
mm,
to feature in our podcast, some nuances and
mm,
some cops who might have. I like to call them like non-mainstream or outliers. Why am I
mm,
saying this? Because it's not so common to find Copts um, who are who would say the word Arab or in the same breath that they would talk about the the religious or religion-based violence that happened on Copts in the Said. In the same way or in the same context, when they talk about um, that they wanted to talk about what's happening in Iraq, and as an Arab person. So how are you like? How are you like? Are already talking? Do you like? What's your relationship with Arabness or being an Arabic speaker from an Arab background, and at the same time you are really passionate about issues that happen on Copts?
Yeah. So I think that is something that developed over time. So I don't remember exactly when I came here how Arab I felt, but at the same time I felt very offended by the like nonchalant like talk about like Iraq because whatever something's happening over there. I also think that because of like having witnessed from the TV screens, like stuff like 9/11, and not having actually like been here in the US in the reaction, a lot of the news media and like a lot of my conversations with people that I know in Egypt centered around like, okay, what's going to happen next? Like, trying to predict. And especially during that time, I was like middle school years. So, trying to predict what's going to happen next. And there was just some fear and tension. I personally view myself as Arab, but only in like a cultural sense. I don't I don't see myself as Arab like from an ancestry perspective because from as far as I can tell, like I'm deeply rooted in like Upper Egypt. But at the same time, I also feel like a lot of my heritage, my cultural heritage, is related to some way of being Arab. Another layer to this is that I grew up in the Protestant church. My family, basically, my grandparents, and that generation, part of my family's like split or like converted into Protestant church, and so I have part of my family that's still very Coptic Orthodox, but I never like deeply had any like rituals or connections with the Coptic identity in the same way. So I never saw there would be a conflict per se between being Coptic and being Arab, but as long as you don't like approach me by saying, oh, you're an Arab, you're not Copt, or like you're an Arab, and so get away from this conversation, that type of thing. Because there's a lot of implications to the term Arab that has been basically used as a slur. But outside of that, I felt like there was a deep implication for basically it's a shared future that we have in the region. And so when something happens to somebody, it will affect the rest of us. I think that's mainly how I felt it.
It's actually really interesting that you felt that from a young age. I don't know. I think that's just very interesting because I feel like growing up in the US and the identity politics, it's very like you have to stick to your own kind, and that's how you quote unquote save your own kind, is like sticking to your own kind. So I feel like a lot of Coptic people here are just very you just have to stick to the Coptic identity as strongly as possible, because that's what's coming under attack, and there's not a sense of collectivism in a sense of who's doing all these attacks and to whom. So, really interesting. And I feel like because you've had that sense from an early on, I kind of have known you. Actually, how did we? It was like Instagram, right? But like for like, I don't know if it's been a couple of years or because I feel like you'll like swipe up and we'll have a little chat, and then you know 5 months later a little chat.
Yeah.
So like I feel like I know you, but you do a lot of work in the Carolinas, and I was wondering if you could kind of speak to what's going on over there and what you feel you've been plugging into in your community.
Yeah, so part of my journey has been basically reconnecting with my Copticness because
Mm,
I basically went from being very much Egyptian, Protestant Egyptian, all of that, to like, I'm trying to be like Baptist in a white Baptist church. And
mm.
that was very difficult because
Baptist
I
is very
never,
southern too.
yeah,
That's so funny. Anyways.
it's like I never fit in because
Mm,
I also like grew up in, and I suppose like a lot of people like come from similar backgrounds where
mm.
like we're not really politically active, but we have a lot of opinions about stuff, especially when it comes
Yeah.
to the US. And so like I know exactly
Mm,
what like I want to see in the world, especially foreign
mm,
policy, but like pretty much everything. And so whenever I would voice an opinion to anybody, it would be exactly the opposite of
mm,
basically anything that they would like within the white Baptist church perspective. It
mm.
just didn't fit right with being Christian. Like you can't be Christian and have this sort of. I'm like I
Yeah.
don't. So that's when I started to like over time reconnect with other stuff. So I
Mm.
majored in Spanish and information technology. Um,
Cool. So you're fluent in Spanish?
I am.
Oh, awesome.
I don't use it as often now, but I love it. I love languages in general. So
Mm,
I try to like either learn or like pick up a few words here and there. And
mm,
then Spanish was really like how I got introduced into like basically organizing because through college, I was able to connect with organizations in upstate South Carolina. And then from there, I was able to like realize when things are happening,
mm,
when the immigration reform stuff would come to the
mm,
table. Because I had studied immigration, I had
mm,
studied like and documented like what's the best pathway forward. I
mm,
started really like wanting to be part of that. And especially when DACA came up, Deferred
mm,
Action for Childhood Arrivals came up, it's basically people who came as minors with their family
right.
and they don't have documents. And that's when I started to really like want to be part of it, even if not like sometimes when there's an event in the streets, I'd be a part of it. And sometimes from
Mm,
behind the scenes, I'd volunteer. And then from there, as I started to get plugged more into like my Coptic identity and then my Arab identity, that's when I started to look at what's happening in the world,
mm,
other like especially in my area, like what's happening.
mm,
And it wasn't until like May of 2021 is when I started to really dig into like Arab world, especially Palestine.
mm,
But through that transition, from basically when after I graduated through May of 2021, I was able to like get in and out of organizing. And I do
mm,
believe there's a good chunk of
mm,
organizing that's happening in the Carolinas. I don't
mm, yeah.
think a lot of it is related to the Arab, or especially not the Coptic,
Yeah.
world, because it's difficult for us because of
Mm-hmm.
how it's been for us, because of us trying to protect, again, the Coptic identity.
Hmm.
Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it can be hard to be the face of a movement,
Mm,
even if you're not like truly the face of it. But if, especially when we're smaller, or like we're
mm,
smaller groups of people in like upstate South Carolina, there's a good number of Coptic people, but it's not enormous. And so you'll be like, people will know that you represent this minority, and so it becomes very difficult to be the face of something,
fascinating.
especially when like media talks about it in the US, and it's like it can be moved in like whole other direction.
Mm,
And it's just easy, or not even easier. I think part of it is like trauma too, that we're carrying
mm,
so much trauma that we're trying to protect ourselves and our families,
mm,
to make sure that we're safe within our community.
mm.
Hmm.
Yeah. I have that conversation a lot with folks because I think a lot of people feel that if we supported, especially now, we've had this conversation a lot. If we support other Arabs in their cause, um, they're not going to come out for us, or there's a sense of like, um, we're just going to get lost in the sauce type of situation, because nobody cares about Coptic people and nobody cares about our issues. So it's just it's yeah, I think it's very interesting where Coptic people feel like they can, because it's very like different from the Egyptian political scene, where I feel like Coptic people feel they can plug in with Muslim community members, whatever background, atheist community members, etc., secular. Um, versus here, I feel like there's a sense of uh yeah, there's like a reservation to be involved with other communities because there's not a sense that it'll be reciprocated because of the minority status in the United States. So it's, yeah, anyways, very
Yeah,
interesting too. It makes it hard to build bridges to between Arab communities because everyone's like, are you going to come out to our thing, or are you going to come out to our thing, like
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And also, like Carol, I think you added
Mm.
different dimensions to the conversation,
Mm,
because I think we're in Coptic communities we are used
mm,
to the one-sidedness or the binaryism of the conversation, where like
mm,
we move from Egypt because of oppression and we go
mm,
to Coptic Orthodox churches, and this is life for us as Copts. And whatever that group of people inside the church want to do, especially also with the authority of Coptic Orthodox Church leaders, we would
mm,
do. But you're bringing multi dimensions to the conversation. You're bringing like radical empathy to
mhm,
how, like you're bringing more understanding to how Copts and Coptic families and the immigrant generation and Finnish generation think of like the importance of like the trauma, the how disconnected from other Arabs, and so it's really fascinating how you are reading that's the situation. And actually it's interesting too to hear your story of trying to come back to Copticity. And I think actually maybe the broader way that you are presenting on the, or the non-binaryism that you are presenting here, or something that it challenged the binary thought to the conversation here, is that you might have been not brought up as a like a church goer all the time inside a Coptic church, especially in diaspora, because from my experience when I moved to North America, the US, and then Canada, I found that Copts here can be very, very isolated, way more than in Egypt.
Mm.
So,
Hmm.
And I
It's
agree with that. Yeah, I'm sorry,
mm.
Lydia.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
no, we would like
Um,
to hear your perspective.
Yeah.
Why you agree?
yeah, I agree with that because I've seen this a lot, and it was probably something that I'm trying to actively like ward against because of
Hmm.
having seen it so much.
Mm.
Um, because of um, how smaller, like it's again, it's not a tiny community in upstate South Carolina, but it's still smaller relatively.
Mm.
And because of that, it's difficult to try to like preserve the culture, and especially within the Coptic church, to preserve that heritage and that faith. And the people that I've interacted with, the people that I know, it becomes very difficult to like bridge that gap of like, I want to do something with, so like outside of the
Mhm.
little bubble, because it's it becomes a threat immediately.
Mm.
And it's like we're already like trying to preserve so much. Like I
Mm.
Another thing is that the language barrier, and I think that that's where it had helped me to have known like several languages before coming here, and then I was basically immersed in the US, so I had to know English enough to
Mm.
function very well in a small private Christian school in the South.
Mm. Mm.
So then I was able to do a bit of both, but at the same time, because I wasn't in the bubble all the time, I was
Mm.
able to like see different dimensions. And it's difficult like to have these conversations with people, especially first
Mhm.
generation immigrants who haven't had the same experience, who may not
Mm.
know the language, or may have had a much more difficult time like finding a job, stuff like that, because of all of the entry barriers in the US.
Mm.
Then it becomes very difficult because the
Mm.
stakes are so much higher when you could lose your job if you miss a day of work, or if something happens, you could lose like your livelihood. And the stakes were lower for me. I think that that made it easier to transition to that.
Hmm. Yeah. And the social infrastructure not being there in the South to help immigrants in general. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel
I'm just
that.
fascinated with the fact that like I would get you to ask the next question, Lydia, but I'm actually also I'm so
Mm.
biased now seeing us three of us here. I think also almost all of us, all three of
Mm.
us, are actively
Mm.
working with newcomers and immigrants
Mm.
and refugees, asylum seekers, and
Mm.
undocumented people. And I think actually that really changes you, or at least it adds a another important layer to how you understand the living in diaspora.
Mm.
And yeah, I'm just happy to be with you, Lydia and
Mm.
Carol. Now, yeah,
Yeah.
and I
How long
invite
have you
actually
been?
other Copts. I
Yeah.
invite other Copts actually if you want to really change your mind
Yeah.
or to get
Yeah.
a different perspective about life in the US
That
and
part. Yeah.
Canada, like try to tap into volunteering or getting into working
Mm.
with newcomers, immigrants, asylum seekers, undocumented folks. It will help you and it will change your life. Go ahead, Lydia.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I think that's a really good point too. Yeah, of working with newcomers. Um, I don't want to go down that route, but I was gonna say a couple comments, but I was like, let me reserve my thought. But Carol, I'm interested to ask you how you feel your Coptic identity comes into play in your work. If you feel like um, it's a big part of your work, or n- not as big part, and what maybe is more of a driver, or other identities that come to the surface in your work?
When you say work, are you referring to organizing
Yes.
specifically? Yeah.
Yeah.
So at first, again, because I wasn't plugged into it, I was like, a lot of my initial like
Mm,
introductory phase was more like, okay, I like Spanish, I want to help like Hispanic people, and let's do this.
mm.
And I wasn't really plugged into a lot of like the why and the reasoning and all of
So
that.
question. Sorry. You knew when you were going into college that this was the community, the Spanish speaking communities were the communities that you wanted to work with, or was that something after college that you had kind of decided?
I took Spanish in high school
Mm.
because basically I knew French from Egypt, and
Oh.
my private school didn't have French, so I was like,
Mm.
okay, fine.
Oh my
So
God,
I
you are
took,
quadrophone? Are you
Mm.
quadrophone?
yeah, I
Not,
speak for,
not
yeah, yeah,
try like yeah, not just like because folks here in Canada, it's so normal to for Arabs to be trilingual. So I'm not sure for four languages, but like you are a polyglot then.
Yeah.
yeah. So um, I speak Arabic, not amazing, but I speak Arabic. Of course, English, French, and Spanish, and I in like dabbled with Portuguese for a previous job, and I did okay, but I can't say that I speak it. But yeah, so I took Spanish because I had to, and then
Mm.
I liked it enough that like I started interacting with people, and
Mm.
because of how I look in the South, everybody approaches me in Spanish first.
Ah, okay.
So that that made it easier for me once I knew what to say. It still can be
Mm.
hard, but like, and then I was able to like I started attending like Spanish speaking church like on a regular
Oh.
basis, and then from there is when I started to interact with other stuff. The organizing part didn't come until like into my college years because I was basically interning with an organization. But before that, I was plugged in, and I really enjoyed it because I felt like I was making a difference. And then over time, as I like started to become more and more connected with like being Egyptian, being Coptic, being Arab is something I see in myself. I started to feel like I can do more.
Mm.
But honestly, one of the things that really shows like how Coptic I am is that I'm always like late to everything. So that is, but then another thing is that it's very hard for me to share my opinion on a topic
Hmm.
because even though I have like a lot of opinions, I feel like a lot of the just heritage baggage, I guess, that we've grown up with, and especially as we transition here, is like you want to keep your opinions to yourself because you're endangering yourself if you share opinions,
Hmm.
or you can be like you were saying, Lydia, where like if they're not going to show up for me, why am I showing up for them? And
Mhm.
if I say this, they're not going to like me. And because I'm Coptic, I can't have opinions about like Muslim
Yeah.
people. And it's just a lot of layers about like, I'm trying to help, but doing that silently.
Mm.
Over time, it really helped me to like have social media to where I can share opinions first with like my tiny little group of friends to where
Mm.
I can like think things through about like basically what I'm seeing, how I'm processing. And a lot of times it was just literally like retweeting, resharing what somebody else said without even commenting about it. and then I was able to like slowly like integrate more into this, is like I can have an opinion and still be respectful of others. And it's a very hard thing to do even to this day, like trying to like not feel afraid to share how you're feeling, because of just, again, we're trying to protect within, because like I'm a minority within a minority with, so it's like no matter what, I'm gonna like be different. So it still is very difficult, even like organizing to this day, like trying to like not overstep boundaries, like when it's something that's related to like an event that's for the Muslim community. How am I
Yeah.
presenting, and like, do I
Yeah.
need to show up? Do I need to be there? How do I show up? Like, what do I do? And when events happen in like a mosque or like a masjid, what do I do? It's very difficult to just like try to figure out like where am I actually in danger and where am I just perceiving a danger that's not there at all because of the baggage I'm carrying.
Interesting.
Fascinating, Carol. Especially when I think I really liked how you described the thought process that comes to mind and the unpacking that you are doing on your own and the challenging um misconceptions or like conditioning that we might have had as a cops. I remember the like multiple instances where we were trying to organize online and put like a no post for cops. For the like, like we would see how like challenging. Like, can we put such language out there and the world would see? Is it gonna bring trolls? Is it gonna excommunicate us from the community? Is it going to? So all these things come to mind, and I'm really glad that now I think actually with the work that we see from Al Muhabba, progressive co-ops, and other and the work that you do within your space on your social media, folks, I think that collectivity we are not um,
Yeah.
we are less, I guess, afraid more, and actually the repercussions are way less. And I think actually we might have realized that there is actually no repercussion, and actually why are we afraid from the beginning to put such words online? And I think actually that would pivot me to get to me to ask you, and I think actually a main thing that Lydia and I was really interested to talk about with you today is like your passion about the Palestinian cause. I actually went down your Instagram, and it's not just a recent, like we have found that multiple people in our circles just realized that Palestine. Oh, I am gonna post a lot about Palestine at the moment, and like, but actually, so I thought like, oh, I thought let me challenge this and see if Carol also did that, and actually, no. I think you might have mentioned in May 2021 you started posting about Gaza and Sheikh Jarrah. So could you tell us more about like why you started getting that involved? And you talked a lot about Gaza actually before October 7th, and you mentioned like women movements there. You mentioned like multiple social activism happening in Gaza, not just in different parts of the Palestine or the occupied land. So tell us more about what got you involved, especially in the Palestinian cause.
Yeah, so like you said, May 2021 was my entry point officially, because I grew up in Egypt until I was 14. I knew about the situation in general, but I didn't have a complete understanding. And I think part of it is like, as I moved here, I sort of forgot part of what I'd known. So I didn't fully grasp the situation until May 2021. During that time, Clubhouse was all the rage. So I was on
Yeah. Oh my
Clubhouse
God, I
all the
forgot about
time.
Clubhouse. Wow. Okay.
So that was really my entry point. It was through Clubhouse, because I was in like a book club on Clubhouse, and I loved it. Like, we were a small group of Egyptians. Part of us were like, there was a few in Egypt, there was a few like in different parts of the US and Europe. And it was like, because of how Clubhouse works, it's like you can spend 5-6 hours, so people would come and go. And it like, I
Wow.
learned so much by reading like Arabic stuff, and like reconnecting back to that. And then somebody mentioned Sheikh Jarrah, and somebody started talking about it. And I started following a few communities on like Facebook and Instagram. And then somebody put in a hashtag of like, I forget what the hashtag is, like Save Sheikh Jarrah, something to that effect. And I was like, okay, again, that's my Copticness or Copticity coming into play. Like, Sheikh means not for me. Like, it's like okay, I gotta not be part of this. And then I started realizing it's a neighborhood. It's not like a threat to me, even though Sheikh doesn't necessarily mean a threat, but internalize. And then
Sheikh
as
actually is used in the evangelical in a
that's
Presbyterian
true.
context in Egypt. It's like
That's
there is a
true.
sis and there is a sheikh. Like,
Oh.
actually, so for Copts, actually, like, if you don't know, in Arabic, if you are living in Egypt and the evangelical churches, including Baptist churches in Egypt, the hierarchy, of course, they say that they are against hierarchy, but the labels
Yeah.
inside
Yeah.
Protestant churches in Egypt, it's assis, pastor, and the sheikh, elder. So yeah,
Yeah.
sorry,
Fascinating.
Carol.
I didn't
Yeah,
know
we
that.
use sheikh.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you mentioned this, because I never, like, I've heard that, but I've never put the two together. Like, it's very interesting. So yeah, and as I started to realize, wait, that's another threat. I can actually do something and not be like in danger. That's when I started researching, and like, I sat my mom down. I'm like, Mom, I need help in researching this because it's so big. And we just started looking at like the
Oh.
history, and like just the history of like even Jerusalem, like over time, how many times it's been invaded over time. The population of like Jewish population, Muslim population, Christian population, and whatever else was part of that community. And just realizing that what I had in mind was not what had happened. That, like, even though I knew that like that the Israeli regime, the Israel, whatever, the occupier, was a very aggressive thing, I always had in the back of my mind, but this is a thing for Muslims to talk about. It's not a thing for me to talk about. And then as I looked into it, I was like, but this is not, like, religion plays a major role, but it's not solely about religion. In fact, a big part of this matches very well with things I had studied about like Latin America. And that's when it clicked. I was like, this is just colonialism, but in a very like, it's it was like let loose, colonialism let loose.
Mm.
And because of what I studied about like colonization in the Americas, and I hadn't even started looking into like North America yet, but because of what I had studied and knowing that there was genocide and what the process was, then it was like, wait, but we can do something about this now that we couldn't have done here. And knowing that really empowered me to really want to do something. So my involvement really started with a connection from Muslim people who are like Egyptian, but then it was propelled by a lot of what I had studied about the Americas and what I had. And really, I had also read about, of course, obviously, I'd read into the Holocaust. And in addition to that, I'd also read about like Ireland and that struggle. And having known all of that, you have something to compare it with. And it's just, it's like, but I can do something now that I couldn't have done to intervene in the Americas. And that's really what got me so lit up about it.
Amazing. That's a really wild. I don't know. I feel like even thinking about like a Latinx community member coming up to you and speaking Spanish, and then you're just like this Coptic person. I don't know. It's weird how life works in the Carol. I don't know, in the South sometimes, that people would assume maybe you're Latina, and then turns out it's like this cool Coptic person. um, I want to round us out by asking you, what do you feel like if you could speak to a little Coptic child and give them words of advice or comfort or sense of self, what would you say to them? I always like to go to the inner child because uh, my moon is in Cancer, so I don't know. I always like to feel like we're always talking to the next generation. So that's where I feel like would be a nice rounding out.
Yeah, I because of one of the things that I really focused on a lot, like over the
Mm.
past year, is my inner child stuff, and so it's
Yeah.
for me is like such a precious thing.
Yeah.
I would say that you are wanted, you are
Mm.
beautiful just the way you are. You
Yeah.
don't need to change who you are to
Mm.
adapt into the world. You can be different things at the
Mm.
same time, and that's okay. And you can change your mind about things, and that's okay too. And
Mm.
just because something bad is happening in the world doesn't mean that it's your responsibility. Because I feel like that was one
Yeah.
of the biggest things for me is that I always want to intervene to save.
Mm.
And I really need to like remind myself, and I want to bring that to the table, that we have carried so much baggage over the years that we want to
Yeah.
intervene to save.
Yeah.
And just because there is something bad doesn't mean that it's our responsibility. It is our responsibility to nurture ourselves and to
Mm.
connect with ourselves and to be who we are in all like in all our fullness.
Mm. I love that.
That's beautiful, Carol.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think it
Thank
touched on
you.
everything. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. I don't know if Marcus, you have any final thoughts. Also, Carol, if you had any final thoughts as well.
I
I
Yeah, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Carol. No, go ahead.
Yeah. I thank you so much for this opportunity. It was
Oh.
amazing.
Oh.
And I really encourage like all
Mm.
of the Coptic people in our community to like just
Mm.
connect with each other, connect with who we
Yes.
are,
Mm.
because we can do this in a way that doesn't
Mm.
harm ourselves. And like
Yeah.
we, as long as we are who we are, like
Mm,
in our fullness, we can express who we are and don't feel like pressure trying to fit it in. It's okay to not
mm,
have an opinion on everything, but
mm,
but know that there's a huge community actually that is there to
mm,
support, that may not always be easily like visible.
mm. Yeah.
That's beautiful, Carol. Like lots of dimensions. Like I really enjoyed listening to you and like engaged
Mm,
with our questions. Was like adding multi layers and
mm.
compassion and complexities to issues that might
Yeah.
be answered like, oh, it's very simple. This is what it is, and one, two, three. This is what. But the reality is like stuff can be way more complex, and we need to hear each other, learn from each
Yeah.
other. And yeah, you provided like a lot of insight and really radical empathy to um, uh, many of the things that we do as cops. And I think it's really much needed. So thank you. Thank you for all your insights, Carol.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
And thank you
Right.
for all of you listening. Feel free to email us feedback or follow us on Instagram and DM and let us know if there are more cool cops that we should interview and connect with. Thank you, Carol, again. And you'll be seeing me, Marcus, again, as always.
Yeah.
Sounds
The two
good.
troublemakers. Yeah.